Hi, welcome to English 100. I'm Professor Kimberly Escamilla. I'll be your instructor for this semester. It is a fully online class, and so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the class and how we're going to work, what the guidelines are, some themes, and we're going to talk a little bit about your diagnostic summary and some strategies for active reading and sort of how to set up your paragraph so you have good paragraph development. So what to expect as far as the work cycle? We will always start with an online discussion about a topic, and this is meant to be answered typically before you read anything in the text for the class, and just sort of based on your own experience, and recognize what you already know and maybe what biases you come in with, and also just to get to kind of see where everyone else is in the class before we read. Then we're going to read and annotate and read some more and discuss. And then we'll go through and read the prompt, and then you'll start working on a claim for an essay. You'll gather evidence and start making a draft. We'll also take a reading quiz for each section. There are 4 sections or 4 units. And then once you have a draft down, you'll do a peer review and you'll be matched with a partner. And I'll switch those around a couple times during the semester. And then you'll revise and edit your paper and submit it. And you will always give me a thesis and an outline for your paper so I can give you feedback as to how it's going before you turn in the final draft. And then I always, after you turn it in, you'll review comments, and I'll recommend tutorials that you can have in the Writing Center, and we'll continue to work. Another thing you want to do is always review the schedule and syllabus. The syllabus is up now, and the schedule is found under the calendar. If you go to the calendar in Canvas, which we're using Canvas, not web access, and under calendar, if you look and click on what's called agenda, that will allow you to print out the schedule for the whole semester, and you can see when all the due dates are. You could also, I encourage you to use the Writing Center. This course does not have required TBAs in the Writing Center that you have to do, but I highly encourage it, and it's free, and they're faculty tutors. And so what you want to do to get started is read the file that's online about summary and paraphrase, watch the video, the Chopra video about stereotypes, and look at the model I've given you and start kind of putting together your own summary. And then you'll upload that summary for me to review and give you feedback. The overall unit for participating in the conversation and the summary and all of it is worth 10% of your grade. And so the grids are weighted, and we'll go over that soon. The first text we'll read after you do your summary is called Whistling Vivaldi. We're going to read the first 3 chapters, and it's written by a researcher named Claude Steele, who has worked for 30 plus years in looking at the issue of stereotypes and doing research in this area. What I like about the book, and what students tend to like, is a mix of story, his personal story, a lot of stats, discoveries that he's made, scientific discoveries, and conclusions he's come to. One little bit of ground rules for our class is that, we're going to be online and talking a lot about stuff, and a lot of times when people are online, they feel a little more free to maybe not monitor themselves completely. So we want to make sure we have ground rules. If one of you make a mistake online and maybe offend someone else, and if you feel offended or you've made a mistake, go ahead and apologize to that person. If you've been offended, please let me know or work with that person to try to help them understand why they might have hurt your feelings or maybe have said something that seems like not quite right. And it might be unintentional and you don't know, so you want to make sure it needs to be addressed. I can also speak to that person privately if you don't feel comfortable. So just let me know. And so some ways to kind of think about when we're online. You want to avoid, you don't understand this because you're not a woman, or you're wrong, or, I don't have time for this. You want to instead say something like, oh, that statement kind of hurt me or made me feel a little angry, or I think it would be better if you said it this way, or I feel too angry to talk right now. Something like that would be a better option. Some recent news that has come up, obviously the elections has brought up some issues of stereotypes and also like issues of cultural stereotypes, and Halloween always brings up these issues with like dressing up, and we also have issues in the news recently regarding racial stereotypes and racial profiling and police use of force. So we're going to be talking about all of those issues, and these slides, by the way, are going to be available without the video as well, so you can look at them online. So recent questions I've pondered based on this recent news is, why do stereotypes have such power, and what could I do about them to help, as a teacher, to help my students understand them? And I think all of you have been impacted by stereotype and stereotype threat, but maybe haven't realized it. So we'll talk about that. I also want to look at the American Dream, and we're going to be reading a text called Between the World and Me, and it really focuses on this idea of our history of how America was established via slavery and other things, and how that contributes to some of the issues about the American Dream now. And then we're going to look at racial profiling and police use of force, how police are trained. Is there really brutality going on that's more than in the past, or maybe there's just more cameras now and so we're exposing it more, and how are we dealing with that? And finally, looking at what our implicit biases are. We're going to be studying those. Okay, so this is I saw this slide, I thought it was interesting, this idea that there's a lot of stereotypes out there that people make and that they've experienced themselves. Here are some very common stereotypes. These are uncomfortable for people to look at, but I think they're good ones for us to remember, that they're out there and we can feel them, even if it's subtle and not so overt like this. And so we want to be careful about them and think about how they might impact us all. So our first assignment is a diagnostic, and so what I'd like you to do is review the file online called Summary versus Paraphrase. And then I've given you a model on that handout based on Keith Jason's TED Talk. You can look that up if you want, you're not required to, but I summarized that for you and paraphrased it, just to show you the difference. But you are only going to have to do a summary, and you're going to do the summary of the Tasneem Chopra's video about stereotype threat. And so you're going to write it and submit it, and then I'm going to give you feedback. I also use a rubric, so you'll see the rubric in the unit section under files, and I'll fill that out and give that back to you. So the next step is that I want you to think about when you're reading. So this doesn't affect so much the summary part, but when we start reading the book, and many of you will start right away, we want to make sure you annotate. And annotate just means that you are giving, writing down notes as you read. And the reason why you need to do that is our minds cannot remember all of it. And so to save rereading and all of that, you need to make marks and trace your thinking and your questions. And it helps you build your knowledge and be able to connect that to where you might have areas that you're not sure about, and help you with things you've learned in the past too. So what does it look like? This is a very common way, like a double entry journal. You don't have to use purple and orange, but what are some passages from the text that stand out, and write those out. And then what do you think about those? Do you agree or disagree? Does it have a question about it? And you can make a piece of paper with two sides and do that. You can do it on the computer as well. Some people also like to just write in the book. I'm kind of a book writer, so I identify with this, but you could make notes in the book, and that'll help you remember and mark pages and things for your ideas. You always want to also circle things, words you don't know, and look them up as you go. And finally, some people want to give their books back or borrow them from the library, and so these Post-its are a really nice way to keep yourself organized, especially if you're using your book for a quiz, an online quiz, or using it to get your evidence for your essay. Having it marked with highlighters or Post-its is really helpful. Okay, so next I just want to review, and most of you already know this, but I want to review the idea of thesis statements. So thesis statements, there's three types. It is a statement that is your main focus or point of your essay. It's normally in the last sentence of your opening paragraph of your introduction. And there's typically three types. One called a claim of policy, And this normally has a should statement, like CSM should offer more hours for the library to be open or something like that. So a should statement. A claim of value, when you argue something comparatively, something is better or worse or more efficient or less efficient or more valuable or less important than something else. And then thirdly is a claim of fact. Now this one's really tricky because it argues directly that something is true. So it sounds like it's fact, but it actually is arguable. So if someone was to say, students achieve well in college when they have support at home. Now that sounds like a fact because there's no should statement or there's no comparison, but it really is arguable. Maybe students achieve well when they don't receive support at home or receive something else instead. So these are the three types. I'm going to give you examples right now. So here's our three types. You can read over these, and these are three examples that deal with stereotype threat. So once you start reading the first three chapters of the book, these will make more sense, but you can start seeing these three and review the lecture slides a little later. And then so on your own, I want you to look at these two and see, like, can you figure out, based on the policy, fact, and value claims, which one each of these are. So see if you can test yourself and see which claim each of these are. And if you can start identifying those on your own, that would be good. Okay, so next we want to look at this thing called paragraph development. And so not including so much your intro and your conclusion, but your body paragraphs, they need to be fully developed and they need to have a structure. And so what you want to do is make sure each body paragraph has a topic sentence, which covers the content of the whole paragraph. And this will keep you focused. Then you'll normally have some explanation about that topic sentence. Then you'll add a little bit of evidence. That's the E, the second E. And that evidence can be an example. And it can also be like a quote, a piece of evidence could be a quote. And then finally is analysis. And the analysis is really looking at why is this evidence important and how does it connect back to your original claim. And so the evidence and analysis can be repeated, and in this first essay you write, it will be repeated. And you will have personal example and a quote from Claude Steele in each body paragraph. So I have that highlighted there for you as a reminder. And so here is a more explanation of those T paragraphs. And then I've written out a sample here for you that has the content from the essay you're going to be writing. And this is a sample one for like a math, let's say you're talking about a math class. And so I think if you read through this, you'll see the steps, and this will be a good model for you to use when you're writing your own essay. Okay, so in the next video, I'm going to talk about how to choose your evidence and cite it, and we'll discuss a little bit more about whistling Vivaldi. Okay, I'm excited to get to know you guys all, and I look forward to seeing you in the opening discussions, and I'll post another video about how to use Canvas soon. Thanks.